Now this part here, it came in like an envelope.
Oh, folded up.
It folded up at the back, and do you in front, like that. So you see where the baby comes in, and then you that part there is done the same way. And then sometimes some of the nappies were put in as well.
Right.
If Mum was going out for the afternoon. This waha waha is very rarely taken part in now at home, because there are the push chairs and the prams and all the modern things now. Our younger mothers now don't do what the older mothers used to do. The older mothers had to do a lot. If there were babysitters, well, fair enough, the babies were left at home while they went out in the gardens. Where I come from in Whakarewa, it was twice as hard for the women, because there was no gardens where we lived, because we were built on rock. So they had to go out of Whakarewa to a place called Parikarangi to do all their gardening, which is from here. Say you had to walk from here to Pine Hill or something, and it was walking, unless you were rich enough to have connections to get a horse. And then they used to walk, so the babies were carried on their backs, and their food for the day were carried on their backs. So the baby was up there, and they had all their kitties. Everything was done with their with flax. So flax, of course, is very important to Māori in those days.
Well, my first introduction to baby wearing was actually way back in 1990 when I was living in London, so a very long time before children were on my radar. And my cousin there had a flatmate who had an 8-month-old baby whose father was African, and they were raising the child with an African custom where the baby's constantly carried for 9 months and never put down. Somebody would be holding it. And I thought at the time that was really quite different to how certainly we did it in the West. But the thing that struck me about the baby was it was the most placid, easy-going baby I'd ever met. It never cried. I'd never heard it cry the whole time I was there, and it would go to anyone, and it just seemed amazingly attached to its mother. And I thought, there's something in this. And at the time I didn't even think about children of my own at the time, but it just kind of sowed a wee seed in my head, so that when later on, many years later, I did have a child, that just kind of, it was there, and it was like, just seemed different to the how you see a lot of children behaving, where they're sitting in strollers screaming and crying and not particularly happy.
Basically from day one we had already learnt about the continuum concept and about the importance of wearing a baby, through the fact that, well, the main reason is because babies are not meant to be born at the time they're born. They're actually meant to be born a lot later. If you look at animals, giraffes, cows, dogs, whatever, as soon as they come out of the mother, they can basically stand up and are ready to go and are ready to walk and hold themselves and sort of defend themselves. Human babies don't do that, and so they need to, well, one theory, if you like, is that they need to be in the womb for another 9 months after birth. But they can't do that because we have to, otherwise you can imagine giving birth to a 9-month-old baby, it's a little bit more difficult. And so they need to be in that womb state, a bit like a kangaroo or a possum. They need to be in that womb state just for a little longer. And so this idea that we followed is that we need to carry the babies as close as possible to a person. It doesn't matter if it's the mother or the father or just a friend or whatever. Just they need to be carried all the time. I mean, if I see babies who are in strollers and prams in town and they're crying and crying and crying, and I just think, just grab him, just hold him, he'll be fine.
Turns out that attachment parenting is sort of more like a philosophy that I didn't know that I had. So having my babies close and being able to get them to sleep comfortable with me, it just makes sense to me. Having them around me while I do things so that they can see what we're doing, having them involved, just makes life easier actually than having babies somewhere else and me doing something else. just works. Don't know why, but it just does. And if it worked for him, it works for her, and that's what I like. Happy mums, happy babies.
Thank goodness for the swing when you've got an overtired toddler. Out to it, power nap before dinner.